My girlfriend took my sports car without permission and met up with her ex to drive it. They crashed it, and now my girlfriend is begging me not to press charges. My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year now. She stays over a lot and even has a key, but doesn't live with me yet, and I plan to ask her to move in later this month. Our relationship has a lot of open communication, which I love, and our biggest problem is her relationship with her ex. She told me he was a manipulator and mentally abusive, so they broke up. Yet she still insists on keeping contact with him and calls him a friend. Recently, I got a call in the middle of the night from a hospital saying my girlfriend had been in a car crash. I was confused for a moment as she doesn't own a car, and the only one she drove was my day car, and she hadn't asked to borrow. I thought about who she would have been with if she wasn't driving as I rushed down to the hospital. When I got to her room, she was unconscious and saw there was a nurse and cop beside her. I came over and asked if she was okay and what had happened. The cop asked who I was, and I told him I was her boyfriend. The nurse gave me the rundown that she had a few broken bones but no surgery needed, and she was only asleep because of the pain medication. The cop asked for my name, and when I told him, he paused and asked if I owned a 2022 Camaro. When I told him yes, he said that some officers had already been dispatched to find me as it was my car that had been in the accident. He asked if I let my girlfriend or friend borrow my car, and I told him no. I don't let anyone drive that car. It's my prized possession and something my late father and I had worked on together. It's a relic, and I have barely put any miles on it since my father died. I told the cop my car should be locked up in my garage, and no one has access to it except for me. The cop asked if I was sure, so I pulled up the camera I have in my garage and saw it wasn't there. That's when I started panicking. I told him it was gone, and that's when he said, "So then Ms. Dalton or Mr. Garrison stole it from you." Then I told him I didn't know why my girlfriend would take it, and I sure as hell didn't know anyone with the last name Garrison. Who? I asked if he had a picture, and when he showed me a photo of the guy's license, my stomach dropped. He was my girlfriend's ex-boyfriend. I told him as much, and he just gave me a pity look. He informed me that there was a car meetup, and my car had been used in a drag race by my girlfriend and her ex. Only her ex lost control of the car and wrapped it around a power line. I was furious and asked if my car was okay. He told me it was totaled. I just crouched down and struggled to breathe. My girlfriend knew how important that car was to me, and she F.I.N.G. stole it and let her ex drive it in a damn drag race. I was beyond pissed. The cop told me to calm down before I did something I would regret. I asked if the ex was here in the hospital, and he told me he wasn't going to let me leave the room until I had calmed down. After about 5 minutes of taking deep breaths, he asked if I wanted to press charges. I looked right at my girlfriend's sleeping body and, without hesitation, told him yes. I pulled up the security footage on my phone and went back a few hours where we watched as my girlfriend let herself into my house with her spare key, used my keys to unlock the garage from the inside, and opened the garage door. She grabbed the keys to my Camaro and drove off. I almost threw my phone against the wall. The cop gave me his email address and asked me to send the footage to him, and he would get an arrest warrant for my girlfriend. But my girlfriend would have to rat out her ex in order for him to get charged. I told him I had a camera inside the car, and if it was recovered from the crash, it might have footage of them. He said he would look into it, then just stared at me. He asked if I was going to stay here for a bit longer, and when I said yes, he asked if I was going to do anything stupid, and I told him no. I just wanted to make sure my girlfriend was all right and woke up okay. Then I planned to leave. He told me he'd be putting someone at the door to the ex's room, so I'd better not go looking. I just went and sat down near my girlfriend's bed. I think I sat with my head in between my legs for like an hour before she woke up. Even her damn breathing bothered me at that moment. She was all smiles and seemed so happy to see me until I dropped the hammer and asked why the hell she thought it would be okay to take my car for a joyride. She started stuttering and said she didn't mean any harm, and it was supposed to be a surprise where she had a friend get it all cleaned up for me. Only some idiot driver cut in front of her, and she crashed the car. She apologized and said that luckily she was okay, and that's all that should matter. I asked if she was in the car alone, and she straight up lied to my face, saying, "Yeah, of course." I just nodded my head and told her I was going to go get her nurse on my way out. I told her she didn't need to worry that her ex was okay too, and was in a room nearby recovering. Her face fell, and I just left. Ever since then, she sent me multiple texts a day apologizing, saying it wasn't what it looked like. I got a lawyer and told him I wanted to sue both of them for the cost of my car. Theft, breaking and entering, the whole works. When he had the papers delivered, that's when the phone call started. She left voicemails of her crying and saying she didn't want to go to jail, then rude messages where she said she never loved me in the first place, and that's why she was glad she got back with her ex. Those messages stung a lot, as I knew by now she was obviously cheating on me with him. But hearing her admit it was tough. She eventually got all her family to start calling me and telling me I had no right to do this, and it was one simple mistake and I shouldn't ruin her life over it. I just ignored everyone. I told my lawyer I wanted to get every penny we could out of them, and I found out from the cop later that they had found my dashcam footage with proof they both knew it was a stolen car. So I knew we had a very good case. I can't wait until court is over and I can move on with my life. As I watched the case unfold, I could feel the weight of everything that was happening. I was trying to understand how someone who had been by my side for so long could betray me so thoroughly. It felt like a scene from a movie, but the reality was harsher. I was about to face something I never thought I'd have to, fighting against someone I genuinely thought I loved. The first hearing was set, and until then, her messages continued nonstop. She alternated between pleas and insults, as if she had no control over her own emotions. One day, she was saying it was all a mistake and she needed me by her side. The next, she was telling me that she always thought I was weak and that her ex was everything I could never be. It was as if I were just another pawn in her twisted plan to escape the consequences. She really thought she could manipulate me with this "I love you and I hate you" routine. Finally, the day arrived, and I walked into that courtroom, trying to hold back the anger that was still simmering inside me. She was there, on the other side, with her lawyer, who was trying to argue that it was all just an innocent prank that ended in an unfortunate accident. He described the theft of my car as if it were some harmless mischief, something trivial. I could feel my anger building again, but I stayed composed, focused. I knew that's exactly what she wanted, for me to lose control so that I'd look like the villain here. When the judge asked me to explain what that car meant to me, I took a deep breath and let the words pour out. I explained every detail, from how my dad and I worked on it together to the priceless emotional value it held for me. I told him it wasn't just a vehicle, it was a connection to the person I loved most who was no longer here. She looked at me, and for a moment, I thought she might show some remorse, some regret. But then she looked away, expressionless. When it was her turn to speak, she played the victim card. She tried to convince the judge that she only wanted to do something nice for me, that it was all a misunderstanding, and that the accident was caused by a reckless driver no one saw. Her lawyer, who seemed to have prepared every detail, tried to paint a picture of her as almost a hero, a well-meaning person who just made an impulsive decision. But to me, it was just a pathetic spectacle, an attempt to manipulate not only the judge but everyone in that room, as if she could somehow erase everything. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The security footage was shown, both from my house and from inside the car. As the videos began to play, the room went silent. There she was, sneaking into my house, taking the keys like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then the scene shifted to her and her ex getting ready for the race, the excitement in their eyes, the carefree way they were acting. It looked nothing like an unfortunate accident. It was pure selfishness and recklessness on display. I looked over at her, and for the first time, I saw her lose her composure. She shrank, realizing her mask had finally slipped. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge allowed the footage to play all the way through. When it was over, the judge looked at her with a serious expression, clearly disappointed. I knew, in that moment, that any attempt she had at playing the victim had just shattered. The truth was there for everyone to see, and no pretty words or fake tears could undo what the footage showed. She looked down, finally realizing she couldn't escape this. The judge set a new hearing to decide on the sentence, and I left the room feeling a different kind of weight. The revenge wouldn't bring back my car, and it certainly wouldn't restore the memory it represented. But there was something comforting in knowing she'd finally face the consequences of her actions. In the days that followed, her messages grew more desperate. She accused me of being cruel, said I was ruining her life, that I was making her pay too high a price for a simple mistake. In her mind, I was the villain, someone she could manipulate. I started blocking the calls, but the messages kept coming, each one like a scratch on my resolve, trying to make me cave. But now, none of it moved me. At the final hearing, the judge made the ruling. She was ordered to pay restitution for the damages, and her ex was also held liable for his part in the theft and destruction of the car. They were both charged with trespassing and theft, with no chance to argue it was an innocent mistake after all that the footage showed. Hearing the sentence lifted a weight off my shoulders. She tried one last time to look at me, maybe a final attempt to appeal to me, but all I felt was disgust. She meant nothing to me anymore. As I walked out of the courtroom, I knew I'd never see her the same way again. She hadn't just destroyed a car. She destroyed trust, respect, and any remnants of love that had once been there. That night, she sent me one last message, saying she hoped I'd be happy with my revenge. I deleted it without replying because the only thing I really wanted now was to move on and never hear her name again. I may have lost the car, but I gained something far more important. The freedom to move forward without someone so dishonest by my side. Someone who only thought about herself. The days following the trial were almost unbearably silent. Her messages had stopped, but her family's chatter never did. They called, sent texts, and even showed up at my door. Each one of them wanted to defend that poor girl, claiming that I was overreacting, that her life shouldn't be ruined over one mistake. In other circumstances, maybe I would have felt some weight or compassion, but at that moment, the coldness inside me was unmatched. For weeks, I kept my distance from everyone and focused solely on myself. After all, I had suffered a loss too. That car, beyond its material value, was my final connection to my father. We had worked on it together, and every part of it told a story of us. Losing the car and being betrayed by someone I trusted felt like reliving a goodbye. The pain cut deep, but I couldn't allow myself to be brought down. I decided to rebuild, but not before making sure she would pay for every single thing she had done to me. That's when the idea for my ultimate revenge started to take shape. The compensation covered part of the value, but I wanted her to feel every bit of the damage she'd caused. I used some of the money from the compensation to hire a private investigator. I knew she wouldn't be able to stay quiet. Someone like her always wanted more, and deep down, I wanted to see how far her lies went. It didn't take long to find out that, even after the trial, she was still meeting with her ex, as if nothing had happened. The audacity was almost impressive. Discovering these meetings only strengthened my resolve. I needed to do more. One of the investigators' visits led to a suggestion that I make something public, something that wouldn't just affect her, but also her ex and anyone else who was around. A kind of event that would make it clear to everyone exactly what kind of person she really was. That's when the idea of exposing everything hit me. I planned each detail like a meticulous event. A few weeks later, I arranged a small gathering for all our mutual acquaintances, her friends, work colleagues, and even distant relatives. I told everyone that I wanted to make an announcement about my recovery and close the chapter with her. Of course, she was invited, though I'm sure she was suspicious. On the night of the event, everything was set. She arrived with some friends, trying to maintain the appearance that nothing had happened, as though the entire incident was just a thing of the past. I greeted her with a fake smile, and she returned it, but there was a look in her eyes, curious, maybe even fearful. She had no idea what was coming. I waited for the right moment to step onto the makeshift stage and grab the microphone. The room fell silent, and I began to tell the story of the car, the betrayal, and the trial, but without directly mentioning her name. With each detail I revealed, I could see her face changing color. She tried to hide in the crowd, but it was impossible. I had set everything up so that by the end, no one would have any doubt who the protagonist of this story really was. The climax of the night came when I revealed that I had proof she and her ex were still together. No one expected it, and I showed some photos from the investigations, the messages of apologies and insults she had sent me, even the exchange of texts between her and the ex discussing the race that wrecked my car. She tried to leave the room, but I had someone at the door to make sure no one could escape before the end. Her ex, who hadn't been invited, found out about the event, and showed up just in time to see his reputation get dragged through the mud alongside hers. After exposing everything, I made sure to thank everyone for coming and informed them that the recording of the event would be sent to anyone who couldn't attend. The reaction was overwhelming. She screamed, called everyone hypocrites, and tried to defend herself, but no one was willing to listen. They had seen the truth, raw and unfiltered. The ex, seeing the damage, tried to drag her out, but the crowd united against both of them and started booing. In the days that followed, she lost her job, friends cut ties, and her family, tired of the lies, began to distance themselves. I knew this public humiliation was something she would never forget. She tried to reach out to me, sending messages where she called me a monster and said I ruined her life. But at last, the feeling of justice prevailed, and I ignored every word. For the first time, I felt like the revenge had been complete. One day, however, when I least expected it, I received one last message from her. She said she was leaving the city, that I had made her lose everything, and that she never wanted to hear my name again. It was then that I felt the true closure I had been searching for. She was out of my life forever. The revenge brought a certain relief, and with time, I started focusing on my own things, no longer looking back. I returned to working on cars, something I had put aside after everything that had happened. I restarted, made new friends, and slowly built a life free from the shadows of the past. I could finally breathe in peace. And as for her, I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. That chapter of my life is closed, locked, and buried. The future was finally clear, and I could move forward, no longer carrying the weight of a betrayal that nearly destroyed who I was.